the Japanese Empire in the War in the Pacific. The Japanese system was highly nationalistic and militaristic and was deeply committed to imperial expansion. In speeches, schools, and newspapers, ultra-nationalists eagerly voiced the extreme anti-Western views that had risen in the 1920s and 1930s. In 1931, Japanese armies invaded and occupied Manchuria, a territory bordering northeastern China. In 1940, the Japanese entered into a formal alliance with Italy and Germany, and in the summer of 1941, Japanese armies occupied southern portions of the French colony of Indochina. The goal was to establish the Greater East Asia Co-Prosperity Sphere. The Co-Prosperity Sphere was a failure because real power still remained in the hands of the Japanese military commanders and their Tokyo superiors. Under President Roosevelt, the Japanese expansion in the Pacific evoked a sharp response, and Japan's leaders believed that the war with the U.S. was unavoidable. Then, Japan decided to launch an attack on a U.S. fleet at Pearl Harbor in the Hawaiian Islands. On December 7, 1941, the Japanese sank or crippled every American battleship, but American aircraft carriers escaped unharmed. Pearl Harbor brought the Americans into the war in Europe and Asia. The Hinge of Fate. Great Britain, the US, and the Soviet Union joined together into a military pact Churchill termed the Great Alliance. At the Battle of El Alamein in May 1942, British forces defeated combined German and Italian armies, and Winston Churchill called this battle the Hinge of Fate that cemented Allied victory. In the first years of the war, German submarines successfully attacked North Atlantic shipping, severely hampering the British war effort. The US and Britain now mounted massive bombing raids on German cities to main industrial production and break civilian morale. The Germans mounted a second and a successful invasion of the Soviet Union in the summer of 1942, but the downfall came at the Battle of Stalingrad, when the Soviet Union surrounded and destroyed the entire German Sixth Army of 300,000 men in November 1942. The balance of power was in the Allied hands, but bitter fighting continued in Europe for almost 2 years. An unsuccessful attempt by conservative army leaders to assassinate Hitler in July 1944 brought increased repression by the fanatic Nazis who took over the government. On June 6, 1944, American and British forces under General Dwight Eisenhower landed on the coast of Normandy, France, history's greatest naval invasion. In 100 days, more than 2 million men and almost 500,000 vehicles pushed inland through German lines. As Soviet forces fought their war into Berlin, Hitler committed suicide in his bunker, and on May 8th, the remaining German commanders capitulated. On August 6th and 9th, American planes dropped atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in Japan. The mass bombing of cities and civilians, a terrible practice of World War II, ended the final nightmare. On August 14, 1945, Japan surrendered and the Second World War was over, which claimed more than 5 million soldiers and civilians.